Hello world, and welcome to my channel. I'm Bound to Be Coding. In this series of quick tutorials, I show you a feature of my game, and then I tell you how I made it. Today's feature, a confirmation dialog. It's time for another show and tell. Let's get started. Alright, so I'm in my game, A Struggle to Survive, and I've just built a small campfire. And one of the features I have in the game so far is the ability to dismantle the campfire. And as I was working on this feature, I realized that if I click dismantle on a structure, I have no way of stopping an accidental click. So if I accidentally click on dismantle, I'm going to lose my campfire, and I don't want that. It might be okay for a campfire, but it wouldn't be okay for my house or my log cabin. And so I needed a way to basically provide a dialogue confirmation to make sure that the player really wants to dismantle the structure. And this is what I ended up coming up with. If I click on dismantle, it brings up a confirmation dialog. It has this 4-digit code, and it says type the code above to confirm or press escape to cancel. And if I escape, then of course it escapes, but if I click on it, it'll generate a new code, and then I have to enter the code in order for it to confirm the dismantling of this campfire. And when I do that, then it dismantles the campfire. Let me show you how I did that. Alright, here we are in Godot, and this is my confirmed dialogue scene. The scene is really simple. I have a 9-patch rec, which I'm using as my background, and I just have a background texture from my game that I'm using. And so that serves as the background for this dialogue. I also have a label that I've labeled confirm, which is simply just to show this confirmation text here. I also have another label that is the code, and this is where I'm going to populate the code that's generated in my C# class for the user to type in to confirm that they want to confirm this action. So this dialogue for that purpose. And then I have this text, which is a line edit, and this is where the user is actually going to enter the confirmation code so that the action can be successfully implemented. So it's very, very simple. There's nothing real fancy here going on. There's some I try to keep most of my properties in the inspector coded in the code behind. There are some times when you can't do that. You know, for example, I'm doing some centering here and some anchoring, and I'm setting the size and the position. I have my tooltip coded here so that it displays type the code above to confirm or press escape to cancel. I have added some custom fonts in my theme override to just provide some fonts that are very clear. Other than that, I mean, this is really just a very simple scene, with a 9-patch and 2 labels and a line edit. So let's go look at the code for this. So I'm going to click on my script. And here we are in Visual Studio, and this is the script for the confirmed dialog. Now it inherits from 9-patch rec because that's what it's attached to. And so what do we have going on in here? Well, we just 66 lines of code, so there's not much going on here, just enough to get the job done for this confirmation. So I'll bring in a reference to the line editor. I bring in a reference to my code label. And then I have a constant value here, code length, and this is going to be the length of the code that I'm using. I'm going to use the random class to generate some random characters, and my character pool in my implementation just consists of numbers 1 through 9 and 0. So we have a event handler here that is going to fire basically whenever the user enters the code and hits enter or presses escape. We're going to call this event handler. Here we're going to invoke this event handler. In my ready, I have a reference to my game engine because I use something in that singleton. Code label, the editor. I wire up the editor, which is the line edit. I wire up the GUI input event to an event here in my code behind so that I can code against that. I set the max length on the editor in my code behind here, my ready function. And I have a text submitted, which is another event that I'm wiring up in this code to process the text submitted. I always have an initialize method in my classes. I do this so that when right before, when you instantiate a new scene, the ready method gets called automatically. But sometimes you need to pass some information in, either before the ready or after the ready, and I use initialize for that. That's not built in to the node. That is just a method that I create and I use. So in my initialize, I'm just basically resetting the editor's text to empty, and then I'm setting the code label text to generate code, which is a method right here that generates the code. I set a variable. Basically, this is just a flag in my game that says, hey, the UI is doing something. Don't let the player move. Don't let the player walk or anything. Let's get this done, and then we'll give the player control back in the game. I grab the focus of the editor and I select all, and I do that so that when the confirmation dialog pops up, the cursor is going to be right there in the editor, so that the user can just type in the numbers and hit enter and be done. They don't have to mouse over and click on it to get it to work. Generate code. This is very, very simple. I'm using a string builder, and I'm setting it to the length of my code length, which is 4. I am basically iterating through 0 to 3 or 4 times, and I'm appending the string builder with my character pool. I am choosing a random next in the range of the length of my character pool. So what this is doing is basically just saying, hey, I want to pull from this character pool, and I want to get one of the characters in this pool. So give me a number that is up to the length of the character pool, which is right here. All right. And then I set my code. I set a string variable, which is code to check, and I set it to whatever the value is that was generated from the random generator. And then I have a event that I've wired up here called on text submitted, and I've wired it up here in my ready on text submitted. And what it does is it checks to see if the success. I have a variable here called success. And we'll want to check and see if what the user entered in matches my code to check. So code to check is the random generated code. And we'll have a success, a true, if the value that they type in equals the code that was generated. And then if that happens, if it's on a success, then what's going to happen is we're going to call in on code entered. On code entered is the event triggering for my event handler here, code entered. So it begins with on and then whatever the name of the event handler is. So on code entered, what we're going to do there is we're going to set the game engine to busy, false. We're no longer busy. We release the focus of the editor. If you don't do that, then you go to hide the editor and you won't be able to click on things. Code entered, this is where we're actually calling the event. We're invoking code entered, and we're going to have another place in the code where we're going to be listening for this invoke of this event. And that's where we're going to take the information, this success, which if you'll notice up here in our event handler, it returns a bool. So someone or some piece of code somewhere is listening for this to happen, for this guy to be triggered. And when it does, we're going to pass in the value of that. And then the other option that we have in the confirmation dialog is if the user basically hits escape and cancels, they decide I don't want to dismantle this building or whatever. And in that case, what we do is we're looking for our GUI input, and we're checking if the event is, and I have an action string that is wired up to a cancel, and it's UI cancel. Nothing big here. I'm just basically looking for an escape key, because that's what UI cancel does in my Godot setup. So cancel equals UI cancel. Escape equals UI cancel. And then on code entered, I'm going to go ahead and pass a false, because the user has basically escaped out of it and said, I don't want to enter a code. So those are basically the two events that are going to happen here in the confirmation dialog. And once we get that information, we can move with it. So here we have where I use this is in my object action engine. And now this is a singleton. And how I have staged or set up my confirmation dialog is I have actually added it to my singleton so that I can use it anywhere in the scene tree. I can call it basically from anywhere in the scene tree. And so how I do that is, first of all, I create a reference to a packed scene, which is my confirm dialog scene. And then I have a reference to my confirm dialog class, which is what is the class for the scene. So if you take a look at this, we'll scroll down. We have here in the ready function, we basically say, hey, let's load this confirmation dialog scene. So we use GD load. It is of type packed scene, and that IntelliSense sometimes really gets in my way. And I also have the path to that scene coded into a string constant that I use. Then we're going to instantiate this confirm dialog scene. We're also going to instantiate our confirm dialog, which is of type confirm dialog. That's the class that is attached to the scene. And so we're going to instantiate that. Now, when we instantiate that, we're going to add an event listener to that event, that code entered event that we have in the confirm right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to subscribe to this event by creating an event listener here in where I'm using the dialog. And so the code entered, we're going to do a plus equals, and then on confirmation dialog code entered. Now I'll show you a little shortcut to this. Let me see if I can get it to fire. So you notice how I got that IntelliSense, and it says press tab to insert. So when you're wiring up your event listeners, you can do a plus equals, and then you'll get that confirmation. You can just hit tab, and when you hit tab, it'll insert it into your code for you. It also gives you an option to name it whatever you want. I typically name mine capital O-N on, and then an underscore, and then a capital for my class, or excuse me, my method event that I'm listening for. So code entered is on confirm dialog code entered, and then I go ahead and add this confirm dialog as a child of my singleton. So it's up at the top of the scene tree. It's ready. I can use it anytime. I have another method that I have in my game engine to center the dialog, and I'll show you that real quick. So I have the confirm dialog, and I'm going to set the position in the scene itself. You know, it's way up here in the upper left-hand corner. Okay, so we don't want that. We want it to be centered. And so we have here, I have a method here in my game engine called center position. So I pass in the size of the confirmation dialog, the confirm dialog, all right? And then here, I return a vector 2, which is going to be the new position. So I pass in the size, and I basically use this code to get the center of my visible rect, my viewport's visible rect, and center it, and then I pass that value back. And when I pass it back, I then set the position of my dialog to that value, and we're all good. And then I set the z-index. I could have put this in, the designer in Godot, but like I said, I like to put my code, as much of it as possible, in code, as much of my settings, my properties, of a scene in code rather than bury them in here and then I forget what I set. This is all of this is really great, but it's handy to have it in the code so that you can look at it. And then we're going to hide it. So whenever the singleton loads, we're going to instantiate this guy, and we're going to hide it and get it out of the way. We don't need it right now. And so when the confirmation, when this event code entered is invoked, when it gets invoked, then we're going to, this guy's listening for it. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump down, and you'll notice here, we hide the dialog. We're done with it. We don't need it anymore. The user has hit enter, and we've got the information that we need. It comes in through this code entered, so we're listening for the event, and we're going to pull in the result, and that is this value here, the E value. So we have the sender, and we've got our parameter coming in. So we hide it, and then we say if E, which simply means is E true? If it is, then I'm going to go ahead and do whatever it was I needed to do. Otherwise, I reset. I have another flag in the system for player busy or not, and I just reset that. If you stop the user from doing things, the player from doing things, then you would reset that flag, and that's pretty much it. And then basically, I've got my confirmation, and if I have my confirmation, then I'm going to go ahead and do whatever it was the player needed to do. Otherwise, we do nothing, and the confirmation is hidden, and we go back to where we were in the game. And that's it. A confirmation dialog in Godot using C#. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I'll try to bring as many of these to the channel as I can, and I hope it's been helpful. Until next time, I'm bound to be coding.